I want to address something before this lecture begins. A word that most men have already decided they understand. A word that, the moment it is spoken, causes half the room to lean forward and the other half to lean back. That word is faith. And I am going to ask you to do something difficult before we go any further. I am going to ask you to empty your mind of every definition of that word you have ever been given. Every religious connotation, every association with blind belief or passive surrender to circumstance, every memory of being told to simply have faith as though it were a feeling that arrived on its own when you needed it most. Empty all of it. Because what I am about to describe has nothing to do with any of that. And if you carry those definitions into this lecture, you will miss the most important thing I have to tell you. Faith, as I use the word, is not a feeling. It is not a gift distributed unevenly among men at birth. It is not the province of the religious or the naturally optimistic. It is a state of mind. And a state of mind, unlike a feeling, unlike a gift, unlike a talent, can be deliberately induced, cultivated, maintained. That is what this lecture is about. Not what faith is in the spiritual sense, but what it does in the practical, observable, measurable sense when a man learns to command it rather than wait for it. Let me tell you what faith is not. Because until we clear the ground of every misunderstanding, the real definition has nowhere to land. Faith is not wishful thinking dressed in confident language. It is not the habit of telling yourself that everything will work out while doing nothing to ensure that it does. That is not faith. That is comfort. And comfort has never built anything worth having. Faith is not the suspension of reason or intelligence. I am not asking you to stop thinking. I am not asking you to ignore evidence or pretend that obstacles do not exist. The men I studied, the men who demonstrated faith in its most powerful form, were not naive men. They were not men who looked away from difficulty. They looked directly at it and continued anyway. Faith is not a feeling that arrives on its own when circumstances are favorable. Most men wait for faith the way they wait for motivation, as though it were a weather condition that might improve if they are patient enough. They say they will believe when they see results. They will have confidence when they have evidence. They will act decisively when they feel ready. They are never ready, because they have the sequence backwards. Faith does not follow results. Faith produces them. And finally, faith is not something a man either has or does not have by nature. This is perhaps the most damaging misconception of all, because it turns faith into a fixed trait, something distributed unevenly at birth like height or eye color, rather than what it actually is. A skill, a practice, a state of mind that can be entered deliberately, the same way a man enters a room, not by waiting to be carried there, but by deciding to walk through the door. I have watched men of extraordinary achievement who began with no more natural confidence than the men around them who failed. The difference was not what they were born with. The difference was what they deliberately and repeatedly fed into their own minds until it became their dominant state. And I have watched men of genuine talent and intelligence fail, not because the world was against them, but because the dominant state of their mind was working against them. Every decision quietly undermined, every opportunity seen through the lens of doubt, every obstacle interpreted as confirmation that success was not meant for them. Faith and doubt are not opposites. They are the same mechanism, pointed in different directions, and whichever one a man feeds, grows. Now I want to give you the definition I have been building toward. Faith is a state of mind which may be induced or created by affirmation or repeated instructions to the subconscious mind through the principle of autosuggestion. That is not a poetic statement. It is a mechanical one. It describes a process, a repeatable, learnable process, by which any man can cultivate faith as deliberately as a farmer cultivates a crop. The subconscious mind does not distinguish between a thought that is true and a thought that is repeatedly impressed upon it with emotion. It accepts what it is given. It acts on what it believes. And what it believes is whatever has been fed to it most consistently, most persistently, and with the greatest emotional intensity. This is why two men can face identical circumstances and reach opposite conclusions about what is possible. It is not that one man sees more clearly than the other. It is that one man's subconscious has been given a different set of instructions. One has been told, repeatedly, emotionally, persistently, that success is attainable, that obstacles are temporary, that the goal is within reach. The other has been told, equally repeatedly, equally emotionally, that the odds are against him, that men like him do not succeed, that caution is wisdom and ambition is foolishness. Both men believe what they believe sincerely. Both men feel that their assessment of reality is accurate. And both men are right, not about the world, but about their own experience of it. Because the subconscious mind, once programmed with a dominant belief, will organize a man's perception, decision-making, and behavior to produce results consistent with that belief. This is not mysticism. This is the most practical observation I made in 20 years of research. The mind moves toward whatever it most deeply believes, and it does so whether the belief was chosen deliberately or inherited by accident. Now consider what that means for you. Every day you spend in a dominant state of doubt, you are not simply feeling pessimistic. You are issuing instructions to the most powerful instrument you possess, instructions that will be carried out faithfully and without question. The subconscious mind is not on your side. It is not against you. It is indifferent. It executes whatever program it has been given, with the same efficiency whether that program leads to achievement or to failure. This is why I say that faith and fear cannot occupy the same mind at the same time, not because they are moral opposites, but because they are competing programs, and only one can be dominant. The only question that matters in the context of this principle is which one you are feeding. I want to tell you about my son. He was born without ears. The doctors were certain of what that meant. They told me he would never be able to hear, that he would likely never develop normal speech, that I should prepare myself and my family for a life in which this child would be permanently and significantly limited. I did not accept that verdict. Not because I was ignorant of medicine, not because I dismissed the expertise of the men who delivered it, but because I had spent enough years studying the human mind to know that a verdict delivered by other men, however qualified, was not the final word on what was possible. I made a decision before my son was old enough to understand decisions. I would impress upon him, through every means available to me, the belief that he would hear. Not the hope, not the wish, the belief. I spoke to him as though he could hear when the evidence said he could not. I communicated to him through every channel available, touch, vibration, presence, repetition, a single dominant message. You will hear. You are not limited. The capacity exists within you, and it will find a way to express itself. Years passed, and something began to happen that the doctors had not predicted. My son began to develop the ability to hear, partially, imperfectly, but genuinely, through the bone conduction of his jaw. He could press a device against his jawbone and perceive sound in a way that conventional medicine had said was not available to him. He went on to work for a hearing aid company. He used his own experience, his own impossible story, to help thousands of people who had been told what he had been told, that their limitation was permanent, that the verdict was final. I do not tell you this story as a miracle. I tell you this story as evidence. Evidence of what faith, deliberately applied, consistently maintained, emotionally charged, can produce in the physical world when reason alone would have produced nothing but an orderly acceptance of defeat. Here is what that story teaches beyond the obvious. Faith is not passive. It is not the quiet internal conviction of a man sitting alone with his beliefs. It is active. It reaches out. It communicates. It impresses itself upon the world and upon the people within reach of it in ways that reason cannot fully account for. My son did not develop the ability to hear because I wished for it. He developed it because I refused, consistently, persistently, over years, to feed either of our minds with the alternative. I did not allow doubt to become the dominant program, not in my mind, and through everything I could bring to bear, not in his. That is faith in operation, not as a feeling, not as a religious experience, as a force, directed, sustained, and deliberately maintained against every piece of evidence that argued for a different conclusion. So how does a man cultivate this state deliberately? The method is autosuggestion, and we will examine it in full in the next lecture. But the foundation is this: repetition and emotion. A thought visited once produces nothing. A thought visited 1,000 times with genuine feeling behind it begins to alter the dominant state of the subconscious. This is why I prescribed the written statement in the previous lecture. The exact figure, the exact date, the plan. Read aloud twice daily, morning and night. Most men read that instruction and nod, and then they read their statement the way a man reads a shopping list, mechanically, without feeling, without the genuine conviction that what they are reading is already in the process of becoming real. That is not faith, that is recitation, and recitation produces nothing. The statement must be read as a man who already knows how the story ends, with the settled, quiet certainty of someone who has already decided, not hoped, not wished, decided that the outcome is inevitable. The company a man keeps matters here more than most men realize. Faith is not built in isolation. It is also absorbed from the environment. A man surrounded by people who counsel caution, who dismiss ambition, who interpret every obstacle as confirmation that the goal was unrealistic, that man is fighting two battles simultaneously, the one in front of him and the one inside his own mind. Choose your associations deliberately, not sentimentally. The people closest to you are either building your dominant state or eroding it. There is no neutral ground. I want to leave you with the same question I have left with every man who has sat through this lecture. What is the dominant state of your mind right now? Not what you would like it to be, not what you believe it should be. What is it, honestly, when you strip away the performance and examine what is actually running beneath your daily decisions? Is it faith, the quiet, settled conviction that what you are working toward is inevitable? Or is it something else? Doubt dressed in reasonable language, fear wearing the costume of caution, hesitation justified as wisdom. Because whatever it is issuing instructions, right now, every hour of every day, to the most powerful instrument you possess. The next lecture examines the method by which that instrument is programmed deliberately. Autosuggestion, the third principle, is not a companion idea to faith. It is the mechanism by which faith is built. Without it, everything discussed in this lecture remains theory. With it, it becomes practice, and practice, applied consistently over time, becomes the dominant state of a mind that has learned to move in only one direction, forward.